It is day 191 of the second Trump administration, and the pressure surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein investigation is going one way, up. The House Oversight Committee has officially rejected Ghislaine Maxwell's request for immunity in exchange for her testimony to Congress. The committee subpoenaed Maxwell last week as part of what it calls an investigation into the federal government's handling of the Epstein case. Maxwell previously said that she would not testify without immunity, but her attorney says there is another path that could convince her to cooperate. Can you guess it? It's an act of clemency from President Donald J. Trump. DOJ officials have declined to answer questions about whether they are considering a pardon recommendation. The back and forth between lawmakers and Maxwell is just the latest in a controversy that has followed the president for weeks now. But while most Trump allies seem eager, desperate almost to ignore the subject, the president himself is struggling to avoid it. And his explanation for what drove his break with Epstein keeps changing. Just watch this.
He took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it. And I said, stay the hell out of here.
Were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were. Yes,
yeah.
What did they do?
In the spa.
Jobs in the spa.
Yeah, people that work in the spa.
Did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her.
Trump isn't the only one who cannot move on from Epstein. A new Washington Post poll shows that an overwhelming majority of Americans across all political spectrums, they want the Epstein files released too. Meanwhile, late tonight, the Senate voted to confirm Emile Bovee to a federal judgeship only hours after a third whistleblower claimed Bovee misled lawmakers about his handling of the Eric Adams corruption case. And remember, last month, a whistleblower came forward that said Bovee told DOJ attorneys that they may need to tell judges to, quote, F you and ignore court orders blocking Trump's immigration agenda. Just two Republicans voted with Democrats against this nomination. They were Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. With that, let's get smarter with the help of our leadoff panel this evening. Vaughn Hilliard joins us, NBC White House correspondent. Melanie Zanona, Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News. And John Allen, senior national politics reporter, also for NBC. Mr. Hilliard, let's start with you. The president's latest comments about Epstein's conduct at Mar-a-Lago, how exactly is the White House responding to this? Because I cannot imagine anyone there is excited to hear him talking about a former employee at his spa who Epstein stole. And that very woman was one of the lead accusers against Epstein and his ring.
And to pay acknowledgement to Virginia Giuffre, who we're talking about here, one of the many women who has come forward. She died by suicide this spring in April. And her family, Stephanie, in a statement explicitly said in the end, the toll of abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight. That is Virginia Giuffre. That is the woman who Donald Trump was talking about today as being taken, essentially stolen, in his words, from working at his spa. Now, she did sit down for a deposition back in a defamation case that she filed against Ghislaine Maxwell back in 2016. And she said she had been working at Mar-a-Lago for 2 to 3 weeks. And that is when Ghislaine Maxwell approached her and ultimately brought her into what was a sex trafficking ring and abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. And I think, Stephanie, this hits at the heart of the fact that Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States, has more of a story to tell than he has told. And to what extent was there criminal wrongdoing by the president? Not clear. Those allegations have not been levied against him. At the same time, we're talking about a power dynamic that the president of the United States was intimately involved with for at least 15 years. And there is more of a story that he lets on day after day after day. But at what point does he provide more details, and does he order his Department of Justice to help in sharing that story?
And it's the president who keeps talking. So, Melanie, How are Republicans handling this? Because we have already seen them struggling to get away from this controversy. There's an infighting on how they want to see this thing handled. How much harder is it getting for them that the president is keeping it alive and giving us more clues and information every day?
Yeah, the Speaker Johnson has clearly really lost control of the situation on Capitol Hill. He really initially tried to just brush this issue aside. He did not want to touch us with a 10-foot pole, but that became impossible because some of his own members revolted. They were refusing to pass bills, unrelated bills on the floor. There's a member that's leading a so-called discharge petition, which would essentially go around Speaker Mike Johnson's head and force a floor vote. That's something that they're going to have to contend with in September. And then finally, you have the House Oversight Committee, which is actually subpoenaed for Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony. We, of course, reported today that she has made a number of demands in order to appear before the committee. The committee has rejected giving her congressional immunity. That was something that she was requesting that they are now denying. But clearly, this issue is not going away. And most Republicans really question what information they can even get out of Maxwell, whether she's a credible witness. Speaker Mike Johnson really poured cold water on the idea of whether they even need to bring her before the committee. But it just goes to show that there is such fervor in the MAGA base right now that they have to do something on Capitol Hill to look at least like they're trying to address the issue without also crossing President Trump at the same time. That is the very fine, delicate line that Speaker Mike Johnson and his top members are walking right now.
But it's not just MAGA. We do not see many polls where Americans almost unanimously agree on a single issue, but voters are saying it loud and clear. They want to see the files, and if these specific files don't exist, they want more information, all information, any information. John, how's the president going to get himself out of this?
Well, by the way, first of all, Stephanie, you're right about those polls. I mean, ice cream doesn't poll as well as turning over the Epstein files. But, you know, the question of how he gets his way out of it, I'm not sure what the answer is to that. The easiest way would be to release the Epstein files, to have the Justice Department release everything that it has publicly, and to the extent that they need to redact names or the extent that they need to redact certain information to protect, victims, things like that, then, they should do that. But if he wants to get rid of this once and for all, he's going to have to release all of that information from Pam Bondi and the Justice Department, everything that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have over at the FBI. Otherwise, you are going to continue, I think, to have demands for this. And I think you're going to continue to have not just demands for the truth, but demands to continue conspiracy theories around what's going on. It's a very important thing that Vaughn said a minute ago. The president has not been accused of any crimes in this. And yet, at the same time, he is obviously uncomfortable with some of the information that's in those files or what might be in those files.
Then can we just level set for a minute, Vaughn? Is this administration seriously or even semi-seriously or even potentially seriously considering clemency for a convicted child sex offender? Excuse me, sex trafficker.
It's a good question, Stephanie. And I think that was telling, the fact that Todd Blanche sat for 9 hours with Ghislaine Maxwell and would go and turn to somebody who very clearly, prosecutors, but also a judge, questioned the extent to which she was actually remorseful about any of her actions over those extended years with her sex trafficking that she was found guilty of, along with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think we should be clear. There is a part of this. We don't know the Wall Street Journal, who the sourcing for the birthday book exactly is. And we don't know the extent to which Ghislaine Maxwell does have more information that she has not shared herself about, whether it be about the sitting president of the United States or others that could potentially be damaging, who have had relationships with the current sitting president of the United States. Ghislaine Maxwell has a story to tell as well here. And I think that is where the Todd Blanche, the personal defense attorney, sitting down with her, I think is a notable step here, and one in which the president has not outright denied that he would not pardon or commute her sentence. I think that there are a lot of serious questions, and that's why Senator Dick Durbin, the Senate Judiciary Committee, is demanding that those 9 hours of transcripts be turned over so that somebody outside the Department of Justice has the opportunity to look at them and effectively ensure that the testimony that she provided has met the eyes of somebody outside of the executive branch.
Well, the House Oversight Committee has declined a request from Maxwell's legal team to grant her immunity in exchange for testifying to Congress. So if that's not going to happen, Melanie, what happens next? Do they just drop this?
No, there will be some back and forth. That's usually how this process goes. There will be some sort of negotiations. She also made a number of other requests. She wants to delay the testimony. She also wants all of the questions in advance, something that typically they do not do in these committee hearings. So her demands and conditions were pretty lengthy and a pretty high bar. We'll see if she drops some of those demands in exchange for testifying, or if there's other ways they can work something out between the two sides to find a resolution. But as I was saying before, this issue is just not going away for Republicans, and it's part of their own making. The House Oversight Committee, for example, it was a subcommittee actually that initially subpoenaed for the testimony led by Tim Burchett. He's a member of the far right. It was not done through the chairman. So there's even tension within the own committee, even though they're putting on a united front right now. They issued the subpoena and the chairman is not taking the charge. Even within that committee, there is disagreement about whether this is the smartest move for them, what her end game would be. That's why they don't want to give her any congressional immunity, because they're not even sure she is a credible witness in this case. But there is just so much pressure on Capitol Hill and for Republicans right now to release the Epstein files, or at least take steps towards that process in order to release some of that pressure and create sort of pressure valve on Capitol Hill.